I am Dr. Jagtesh Kaur Garewal, Assistant Professor, Department of Art History and Visual Arts, Punjab University, Chandigarh. We are going to today study early oil painters in India. The arrival of British and European painters on India's shores had a far-reaching effect on the art practices in the country, with another contributor being the introduction of the Western system of art education, the introduction of the medium of oils, and the increasing focus on academic naturalism amongst the patrons, be it the aristocracy or officialdom, led to Indian artists and art students recognizing that the future lay in this direction. This trajectory of adoption and assimilation of this new aesthetic among Indian artists and how it was almost indigenized is examined through a study of artists trained formally and informally or self-taught from different parts of the country in this module, such as Ravi Verma, J.P. Ganguly, Anand Prasad Bagchi, Shashi Kumar Hesh, Bampad Banerjee, Pestanji Bamanji, M.F. Pithawala, M.V. Dhurandhar, A.X. Trindad, Samuel Rahmin, and A.H. Muller. The transfer of power in 1858 from the company to the crown affected the art scene in India tremendously. The Indian painters and their patronage that had flourished under the company and Indian aristocracy suffered greatly, leaving the space now open for accomplished and individual talent catering to the changed tastes. Another factor for the loss of patronage seems to have been the reduction in the novelty of such works, partly due to the numerous books and journals published over the years that had extinguished the curiosity for exotic, picturesque India, with attention now shifting to seemingly more moral and ethical notions in art. The government, through its Western education system, disseminated academic and Western concepts in the sphere of art by setting up art schools, changing thus artistic perception, technique, and patterns of taste and patronage further. Vidya-mitra is of the opinion that the phase between company painting and early oil painting has not received the requisite scholarly attention. He states that between the end of the company style and the rise of art school trained oil painters, there emerged a mixed style of oil painting that flourished in the country, bridging the gap between the world of watercolors and academic oils. He further adds that these traditional oil paintings were not brought to light all this while because of their relative flat color application, along with adherence to conventional iconography, which distanced them from the pure academic style. The early activity in oils in Bengal is suggestive of the Kalighat tradition. With works having a linear style and shading that provides contour to the figures. At times, artists even directly transfer Kalighat works or other water-based paintings to oil. Vidya-mitra also observes that the Kalighat putts, Chitpur lithographs and these early oil paintings all share a common iconography. On the same lines, and talking about the development during these intermediate times, art historian Mildred Archer notes that the artists in Oudh and in Murshidabad absorbed conventions of perspective and naturalistic shading of figures. by copying the works of British artists. But more importantly, some local artists were copying in oils some British works from the collection of Indian princes and others. In the late 18th century, we come across examples of these early experiments of switching over to oils from the company idiom at the native courts and at locations such as Madras, Tanjore and Mysore. Thus, it was in this background that the most important contribution of Western art, that is of the introduction of oil paints as a medium of painting, unfurled in colonial India. Interestingly, when it was initially introduced, it had limited appeal among Indian rulers due to their developed tastes in the Indian miniature tradition, with another dissuading factor being the high cost of patronizing artists working in oils. But as taste for naturalism grew and the contact with visiting European artists increased, the medium of oil painting became a part of the visual culture of princely courts, with such works decorating walls of palaces. British artists arriving in India towards the second half of the 18th century, such as kettle, and the trend continued over the next century with around 60 artists coming to try their fortune in India. All these can be credited with generating the change of taste among the Indian patrons. Mostly the aristocracy. And for meeting the consequential demand. Thus, by the late 18th century, oil painters were being patronized in the princely courts, and it was increasingly the preferred medium for portraits with a heightened illusionistic realism. In fact, the early oil painters in India fall into two broad categories. One, those who were essentially self-taught or learnt their skills informally and not in the formal setup of an art institution. They acquired their skills through observation, copying and experimentation. The second category is of artists who were formally trained in the art schools set up in the country from the middle of the 19th century onwards. In the first category can be considered artists such as the Tanjore court artist Alaigiri Naidu, who was amongst the first to experiment in the medium. But it was his successor, Ramaswamy Naidu, who with his somber oil works of the Tanjore painting style perfectly fits the bill in this category. In fact, by the second half of the 19th century, there appear a number of Indian artists such as Raja Ravi Verma, Hansaji Raghunath in Baroda and P.B. Kama, an amateur landscape artist of Bombay who had carved a niche for themselves as oil painters, creating a distinctive indigenous style in the medium, being essentially self-taught. By the mid-19th century, with the establishment of the art schools in the country, the instruction in the medium had been formalized and Indian art students were keen to gain proficiency in it. Art schools were set up in Madras 1850, Calcutta 1854, Bombay 1857 and Lahore 1875 with an objective to develop the native genius of the people as established in their craft tradition. There was a contradiction inherent in this system, as Indian crafts were sought to be propagated while rejecting the traditional knowledge that had passed on from father to son for Western methods of art education. What this resulted in was a schism between fine art and craft in the schools and a failure in the proposed revival of craft traditions. The students were encouraged to faithfully copy subjects from nature, humans, animals and vegetation around them. The belief was this would inculcate European accuracy and naturalism in place of the decorative approach, while at the same time not compromise their traditional artistic sensibility. Shodra Dalmia observes that there was an aesthetic hierarchy that prevailed in the school, where after taking initial drawing lessons, only the most promising students were admitted to painting or sculpture in the final year. There was a bias towards life drawing and academic naturalism, whereas technical drawing received little attention. To sum up the idea of such schools and their methods, Dalmia refers to a Bombay Art Society Diamond Jubilee souvenir that quotes, "The new manner had success in official circles and among the wealthy, but also the attraction of the new medium of oil color and the thrill of rendering things naturally, which tempted young artists to accept it. Correct anatomy instead of conventional forms, light and shade painting instead of flat color patterns, painting in tones instead of delineating contours with lines, perspective instead of decorative compositions, opened new vistas and new possibilities of schools of art in general and especially in the context of the Calcutta school." Tapati Guha Thakurta states that the art schools not only provided education in arts but also promised independent and honorable profession to the middle class. Moreover, the wealthy section of the society got their hands on pictures, prints and sculptures they desired with ease. The ascendancy of British power and the resultant decline of the Indian courts, along with the presence of an increasing number of British in the country, continue to impact the art situation. One aspect of this was the shifting patterns of patronage, along with the emergence of an art-conscious public and the success of salon art. An important role in all this was played by the fine art societies that were established at Shimla, Calcutta, Bombay and Madras, and which were meant to provide a platform to the artists to exhibit their works. These were initially founded for British amateur artists to exhibit their works, but over time, in order to adhere to a high standard, it was decided to include professional artists as well. Journalism in India too played a role in nurturing public opinion about art, initially by covering the annual exhibitions of these societies and the showcased works. Newspapers such as the Times of India in Bombay published notices regarding the exhibition of the Bombay Fine Arts Society and discussed the exhibition, taking particular note of certain artists and works. With time, these societies began serving the Indian artists working in the academic style as well, providing them not only a platform to bring their art to the public and to garner patronage from among them, but also providing them access to a significant source, that is, official patronage. It is another matter that Indian artists were usually unable to afford exhibiting outside their own hometowns, though there were some exceptions to this, such as Ravi Verma, Manchar Shop Pithawala and J.P. Ganguly. Apart from a handful of artists, there were very few Indian exhibitors of merit until the 1920s. To begin the discussion on early oil painters in India, we shall begin with the first category of artists who were essentially self-taught or trained in an informal setup, namely two such artists, Ravi Verma and J.P. Ganguly. Ravi Verma. who can be credited with the first substantial achievements in an academic realistic style in oil paints. Never got any formal training in the medium, but was a child prodigy and a naturally gifted artist who went on to get immense recognition from the British and Indian nobility alike. Born in 1848 into an aristocratic family in a remote province of Kerala, the observant Varma in his childhood took interest in art and made sketches and drawings on walls. His talent soon came to the notice of his uncle, Rajaraja Varma. An amateur ivory artist himself, who predicted his success as an artist and even mentored him. Ravi Varma came from a family interested in art. As apart from his uncle, his brother C. Rajaraja Varma was an exceptional landscapist, and sister Mangalabai too was a skilled painter. Though according to Vidya-mitra, Varma had training in the traditional art of Tanjore, with another early influence being murals at temples such as the Padmanabhaswamy in Trivandrum, and was informally or self-taught in European art. Whereas K.M. Varma in his book Ravi Varma's Sketch states, and we put it in quotes, he had none to guide and instruct him in the technique and mysteries of oil painting. Yet nothing daunted, he worked till he overcame all difficulties, quotes close. He was repeatedly turned down for instruction by senior contemporaries working in academic realism and the medium of oils, such as by the Travancore court artist Ramaswamy Naidu and Theodore Jensen. A Dutch painter who also worked for the court around 1868. But all this just seems to have made him even more determined. Vidya-mitra though notes that some pupils of Naidu did help Varma to polish his skills, this being acknowledged by the artist himself. The seeds for the naturalism in his work were sown by various influences, including works of the above mentioned artists, Naidu and Jensen. According to contemporary accounts, he was allowed to observe Jensen's working method. Another important influence was the English painter Frank Brooks. Who, although hired to tutor Varma's younger brother, is said to have influenced Ravi Varma, who took an interest in the lessons, leading to the lightening of his palette. Vidya-mitra notes that these brief encounters led to changes in his technique, method and style, evident prominently in Varma's treatment of the garments in his accession portrait of the Gaikwad of Baroda. This, along with his familiarity with the precepts and practices of academic art, does indicate some form of instruction. With time, as he gained absolute mastery over Western illusionism and naturalism, he went on to fulfill commissions on an almost pan-Indian level. And as a travelling professional, he also broke the monopoly enjoyed exclusively by European painters. Vidya-mitra further adds that Varma devised complex narratives in his works by the study of Royal Academy paintings published in Magazine of Art and the German books he obtained from a German artist at his lithographic press, which too inspired him. The example of his early Tanjore court style is a portrait. Of the family of Krishna Menon. The style of this image being primarily flat, like the work of the early oil painters, Varma marked his presence at the Madras exhibition in 1873 and won the Governor's Gold Medal for his Nair Lady at her toilet, a work that employs chiaroscuro to define form and a somber color palette. This success was followed by prizes at various exhibitions around India, as well as portrait commissions that built and enhanced his image as a society portraitist. There is general consensus that it was Lord Napier's address in 1871 on the fine arts in India that steered Verma into painting the epics, Indian literature, portraits and genre subject matter with the powers of European art. It is imperative to understand that other than the portrait commissions by the artist, what truly brought him to public notice was his depiction of subject matter that included epics such as Ramayana, and Mahabharata, Purans, plays of Kalidas and other Sanskrit authors. He chose some of the most dramatic and climactic moments from these narratives and translated the heroes into human beings of flesh and blood, literally pulling the heartstrings of the beholder. Works like Draupadi at the court of Virat, Jatayu Vadh, and the triumph of Indrajit. Being some of the examples. Vidya-mitra notes that the artist unapologetically paints these works in a Victorian style, not feeling in any way the need to turn to an Indian painting style. He rather believes that the universality of these works lies in the treatment of subject matter, which spoke to people from all walks of life. Popular stories depicted with such accuracy dazzled the people in Trivandrum, Bombay, Baroda and many other parts of the country. Vidya-mitra goes on to note that in Baroda in 1880-81, an evolution is evident in the works as his early and later styles coexist, translating into works exhibiting a movement from a relatively flat style to a greater mastery of academic realism. The example here of the earlier style with flatter colors and lavish use of gold is portrait of Princess Tarabai. Whereas in two later works, Portrait of Tarabai and Portrait of Maharani Chimnabai, the second, there is visible a more incisive study of the sitters with apt capturing of the character, pictorial depth and their youthful shyness. There is greater attention paid to details such as pearls, satin and silk fabrics, brocade borders, pillars in the background and drapery that are all rendered in rich colors in a realistic manner. Another genre he painted was what can be termed as imaginary or genre portraits. Works titled The Galaxy, The Miser and The Gypsies. Being fitting examples. His work, The Galaxy, shows shows his prowess in portraiture, but Dalmia believes that this and other such works transcend beyond into iconic works as they are dense with layers of significance. The work depicts 11 women from different parts of India, from a Muslim to an upper caste Nair lady, adorned in a range of traditional costumes and musical instruments. His paintings worked on various levels. They had a sentimental and melodramatic air in the salon tradition and thematically catered to the Indian sensibility. The works generally required the participation of the spectator to complete the suggested story or incident, and at times even manipulate the feelings of the observer. The Indian intelligentsia was supportive of his work as it restored the past and indirectly ignited nationalist vigor in the minds of the onlooker. Whereas when it came to patronage by the British, it seems that the fact that the Royal Academy of Art, that had long been an arbiter of good taste and good art, gave the highest status to art that was morally edifying, meant that Varma's work was in accord with this. Both the Varma brothers received commissions from the leading princely states and both English and Indian dignitaries. They toured extensively in India, getting commissions in places such as Udaipur, Ahmedabad, Hyderabad and Baroda, with the last being one of the most important states where his major portraits were executed post 1882. The brothers usually worked upon 3 or 4 paintings at one time in their studio. Scholars, based on the study of the diary entries of his younger brother, mention how Ravi Varma concentrated on mythological pictures and Raja Varma, his brother, painted landscapes when not assisting his brother on more serious portrait commissions, whereas at other times they altered or produced copies of their works. Ravi Varma gave a new life to the rich narrative art of India while blurring the line between reality and myth. In fact, his works can be described as blurring the line between his mythologies and genre depictions of everyday life. Scholars state that his images of romanticized reality and contemporized mythologies were 2 sides of the same worldview. The image of Ravi Varma as a pan-Indian painter grew exponentially when he was commissioned by the Gaikwad of Baroda, for whom he executed 14 paintings from the Purans, in preparation of which he undertook a tour of North India. He was supported by his brother and sister Manglabai and a few assistants in this commission. The epic characters in these works had well choreographed landscapes and interiors as their backgrounds. Scholars are also of the view that Parsi theatre had a great impact on the postures, poses and groupings of the figures. The proportions of these figures are said to have been taken from life-size, articulated figures in the studio. Some historians point to the enlarged popping eyes in Varma's work betraying conventions of Kathakali dance. Meanwhile, winning 2 awards at the world's Columbian exhibition in Chicago in 1893 established him not just as an independent colonial artist but as a non-European master of academic art. The 10 works in oil celebrating the cultural diversity of the country, showing women from various parts of India, won him the awards. Their ethnographic content, along with attention to not only the costume but the respective articles of social or ceremonial use, impressed the judges. Such choice of subject matter is attributed to the artist's exposure to Indian intelligentsia during his travels, such as Surendranath Banerjee, Gokhale, Annie Besant and the Tagores. To conclude, in the words of Varma's biographer, Veniyur, he was the first Indian artist to comprehend fully the oneness of the land, the first to paint for all the people, the first to have his settings located from the Cape to the Himalayas. Another early Indian oil painter who turned to the medium of oils and the academic style was Jamani Prakash Ganguly, a prolific landscape artist. Being closely related to the Tagores, he had a congenial environment to develop his interest in art. Interestingly, he stands at the intersection of the metamorphosis of the image of an artist from a native artist to an artist with a nationalistic focus. Even though greatly influenced by his uncle Abnindranath in his initial years, Ganguly moved in a different direction stylistically later. He initially took lessons in oil from the veteran Gangadhar Dey and later from C.G. Palmer, an artist trained in South Kensington. It is under Palmer that historians believe his complete mastery over brushwork comes from. So, even though he moved on to academic realism and the medium of oils, that were at complete variance to the style and technique of the Bengal revivalists, yet his focus on ancient literature as a theme as early as 1900 was the reason he enjoyed the confidence of Bharati, the nationalistic house journal by the Tagores, which regularly published his work. Ganguly was an enthusiastic patron of India-wide exhibitions. Being the only Indian to enter landscapes in Shimla in 1902, he was awarded the Finlay Prize for his Wet Banks of the Ganges. In 1904, his Morning Mist won a silver medal when he debuted in the exhibition of the Bombay Art Society. Vidya-mitra notes that it was here that Times of India praised his landscape for depicting a genuine indigenous vision of nature that was said to be missing in the works of his contemporaries like Dhurandhar. It was precisely due to this reason that his works, capturing spectacular views of the Himalayas, and different moods of river Ganga were favoured by the Bengalis, appreciative of academic art, and the Orientalists as well. The critics saw the peculiar quality of the Indian intellect in his works, which struck a chord with the Indian psyche. Vidya-mitra notes that his landscapes were seen as a silent marriage of the East and the West. In 1907, the Times of India commented on his work On a Cloudy Night that it has the same decorative arrangement of line and harmony of color, so much prized in ancient Persian and Indian pictures. It lacks the jewel-like finish, but has a poetry not always found in their production. He also found success at exhibitions, especially at Shimla and Bombay, and most notably a gold medal in 1910 at the Bombay Art Society. Vidya-mitra summarizes the artist's work as follows. His works show a sensitive grasp of the drama, the variety of natural light and rich colors of the Indian landscape. Other than his landscapes, we also come across some excellent portrait studies done by the artist, which tell us of a painter who had complete mastery over the medium of oils. Apart from the above mentioned artists, others who practiced and excelled in academic realistic art were those who trained in the formal setup of art schools, where instructions and content were based on the South Kensington model. Of the 4 major art schools that were set up, it was particularly in 2, Calcutta and Bombay, that the Western style of art was disseminated, from the inception and was the principal attraction for the students. Tracing the early history of the Calcutta School of Art, Arun Ghosh states that in its first year itself, it had 95 students, of which the majority was drawn from the artisan families, but no less than 11 were from Brahmin families. This, in his opinion, proves the acceptance of art as a profession in society. Some of the illustrious artists from here were Anand Prasad Bagchi, Hari Narayan Bose, Shashi Kumar Hesh, Bampad Banerjee, and Ranada Prasad, among many others. In fact, the prestige of academic art can be judged from the rebellion at the Calcutta School of Art in reaction to E.B. Havel's focus on Indian art heritage at the school. This reaction led to the formation of another school of art in Calcutta, focused on academic art, Jubilee Art Academy. Though it is important to mention that during the initial years, the early oil painters had their own share of struggles. Partha Mittal maps the struggle involved in taking up painting as a profession in the light of it being looked down upon as a vocation of unlettered patuas. This struggle was faced by Anand Prasad Bagchi, who tried his hand at various things before he got lucky when he got admitted to the School of Art in Calcutta in 1865, where he mastered oil painting under H. Locke. He later went on to become a teacher of drawing, lithography and painting at the same school, and in 1880 was appointed as the headmaster. Parallel to this narrative, his reputation as a proficient portraitist in oil was ever increasing. He was commissioned by the Viceroy, Lord Northbrook, to make portraits of Raja Ramnath Tagore, Dr. Rajendralal Mitra and Keshav Chandra Sen. Another early portraitist, Shashi Kumar Hesh, a student of the school from the 1880s, too gained prominence as an artist. He came from a humble background and was an inspecting master of schools. He got a scholarship from the district board there to get admitted into the art school. His exceptional merit attracted attention at the school, and his first important patron was a barrister from Calcutta by the name of Manmohan Ghosh, who later helped him bag the patronage of the Maharaja of Mymensingh. The constant support from the aristocracy and the art school authorities gave Hesh a chance to study at the Royal Academies at Rome and Munich for 2 years from 1898 to 1900. Later, he was invited to London for a brief while on the invitation of the National Indian Association and attracted the attention of Indian nationalists, even painting their portraits. He came back to Calcutta in 1900 and was able to get commissioned for portraits of the Gaikwad's family. He later went on to paint important Indian and British personages. Some of his excellent portrait studies include that of Rabindranath Tagore, Debendranath Tagore, Pandit Shivanath Shastri, Sir W. Hunter and Sir G.C.M. Hunter. Another portraitist from Calcutta School who went on to prominence in the field is Bampad Banerjee, who belonged to a Brahmin household from Hooghly and received his early education in a training school where he was introduced to the techniques of draftsmanship, carpentry or simple engineering. His talent came to the notice of a local editor and publisher by the name of Shambhu Chandra Mukherjee, who encouraged him to enroll in the art school at Calcutta. He felt the course in oil painting quite inadequate at the school, and thus after his school days, he took lessons from Pramanath Mitra and later a visiting German artist Becker. It was under Becker that his skills were polished, and he got an award for Best Figure Composition by a native artist in 1879. Around 1881, he went on to paint portraits while touring around the United Provinces, Punjab and Rajasthan. By 1883, back in Calcutta, he had a successful art practice, with some of his major portrait commissions being for Maharaja Jatendra Mohan Tagore, Narendranath Sen, Barrister Manmohan Ghosh, the Maharajas of Darbhanga and Murshidabad, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, to name a few. Some examples of his later works not only include oil paintings, but oleographs and lithographic prints. Even as the Government School of Art, Calcutta, continued its tradition of academic art in the 20th century, the emergence of the Bengal school style, led by Abhinavanath Tagore, overshadowed it. Whereas the Bombay School of Art continued to promote academic art and its students excelled in it. Steering our discussion to the talent which was refined at the Bombay School, we shall begin by talking about one of the first students and the most celebrated, the Parsi portrait painter Pestanji Bamanji. He had joined the J.J. School of Art in 1871 and was initially interested in sculpture, in which he was mentored by J.L. Kipling, but he later took to painting under Griffiths after Kipling left for Lahore. Griffiths is said to have noticed his work when the students of the school were copying murals at Ajanta, a project that continued for more than a decade, and even recommended him as an assistant to Valentine Prinsep, a visiting painter. Yashodhara Dalmia observes that even such a long association with Ajanta murals did little to influence Bamanji's work as an artist. He went on to become the first Indian art school teacher at Bombay and later officiated briefly as vice principal. By 1877, he left the school and set up his independent studio. Bamanji was very conscious of the power of exhibitions, and under the encouragement of Griffiths, he featured at shows around the country regularly. He became the first Indian to be awarded the top prize in Calcutta in 1879, and later in 1883-84, his Parsi Lady Sewing in an international exhibition won him accolades. He painted one of his most celebrated works, shown at the Bombay Art Society, titled The Parsi Girl in 1887. Dalmia notes that the use of curtain drapes in this work shows the effect of Raja Ravi Verma on the artist, though this convention can also be related to studio photography. In 1889, his Parsi Tiger Slayer was judged as the best exhibit by a native artist at an inaugural exhibition of the Bombay Art Society. Vidya-mitra remarks how the Times of India described his portrait bust as realistic and warty, with parallels drawn with Dutch masters due to the de-glamorized realism in his works. The artist, in works such as Praying for the Sick, took to realism without any artifice in the times when romantic settings were applauded. Overall, Pestanji had a rewarding practice, firstly due to his works receiving recurring notice during the 1892, 96 and 98 exhibitions, and secondly his own Parsi community serving him as a strong source of patronage. The extent of his fame as a portraitist can be gauged from the portrait of the Faridkot ruler, Maharaja Balbir Singh, done in 1906, a clear indication that his fame had travelled far. He was one of the first Indian painters who transcended the category of the native artist, practicing as he did the academic naturalist style in oils, as well, if not better, than the Europeans and the British. Another Parsi painter who gained fame, reaching greater heights than even Bamanji, was M.F. Pithawala, who hailed from a rural, humble background and joined the art school as a student of Griffiths from 1888 to 1896. Like most other academic naturalist painters, he too came into the limelight due to his participation in the annual art exhibitions of fine art societies such as at Shimla and Bombay, and the favourable notice he received there. His successes at the Bombay Art Society began in 1894 and continued for more than a decade, with a gold medal for his Portrait of My Mother in 1907 and repeat successes in 1908 and 1909. His work, a Parsi Girl, got him acclaim at Shimla in 1902. Dalmia observes that his work, Framji Patel, which got him a medal in 1908, shows high academic art standards with the perfectly executed Parsi face and unmatched sensitivity shown in the depiction of hands. Critics singled out his immense talent in portrait painting, praising him for what was termed as a rare feeling for character. With technical mastery of the medium of oils and watercolors, his paintings of Indian women done in watercolors, bound in an album, were presented in 1905 to Queen Mary during a visit to India. He attained international recognition too, being the first Indian artist to have a one-man show at the Door Gallery in London in 1911. One of these works was The Serpentine, and Vidya-mitra notes that the Evening Standard found some observable merits in his work, including his unforced observation of character, natural poses, and tactful handling of figures in interiors. Back in India too, he gained a good reputation among the elite and was producing works of unparalleled quality. Even the then president of the Society of British Watercolorists believed that there was hardly a rival in Britain for Pithawala's swiftness of capturing a likeness. Both Bamanji and Pithawala have been chroniclers of their own Parsi community, with some of the finest insightful and poignant paintings emerging from this theme. Contemporary to these artists was M.V. Dhurandhar, who belonged to Kolhapur and was from the Pathare Prabhus community in Maharashtra, known for their literary and artistic inclination. It was his fascination with the examples of European antiques that created the resolve in him to be an artist. His journey began as a sketching enthusiast that impressed his principal, Greenwood, and later Griffiths, and both pushed him to pursue his interests as an artist. Starting as a drawing tutor in a school, he later joined the J.J. School of Art, being promoted to headmaster and then being appointed director of the school, all along continuing his passion for learning and teaching art. He debuted at the Bombay Art Society as a student in 1892 and gained popularity 3 years later via his work in oil, Have You Come Lakshmi? Depicting a mother and her daughters during Gauri Puja and becoming the first Indian to win the Society's gold medal. He continued his winning streak later at Madras and other exhibitions. In his works, we observe that the artist puts the academic style to use in the representation of Indian mythology. Examples of such works are Sheshashai, Vidya-mitra at the court of King Dashrath, and Radha and Krishna. Noticeable are the excellent rendering of the space, forests and minute details of costumes and jewelry. There is an even stronger air of emotive quality encapsulated by the episode, facial expressions and postures. Vidya-mitra refers to the skills of the artist, stating that he faced no challenge in any format, from miniature to large ethnographic paintings and from posters to ambitious murals done for the Secretariat in Delhi. He created prints for one of Griffith's articles in 1897 and was also the first Indian to design ethnographic postcards for a local manufacturer from the 1890s. He is known for the illustrations he did for Otto Rothfield in 1924 for his Women of India. Interestingly, he worked in watercolors, recreating a series of Maratha history and painted scenes from contemporary life. Festivals and rituals reflecting the social customs of Maharashtra. The artist had another private, lifelong passion for painting figures, producing innumerable nudes throughout his career. He did figure studies from prints or pictures in the absence of models. Vidya-mitra is of the view that this constant dialogue with human form gave Dhurandhar an unbound confidence in his craft and in executing works primarily concerning complex figure groupings from the miniature to the large scale. Another early oil painter who moved to Bombay was Antonio Xavier Trindade. A Goan Christian, he shifted to the city, where after graduating in art, he initially worked for the studio of Raja Deen Dayal, assisting in the tinting of photographs. Though later, he went on to join the JJ School of Art. Here he became an expert in handling pencil, charcoal and watercolor, as well as oil painting as a medium. Over time, he developed a great facility in the medium of oils, earning the name the Rembrandt of the East for the copies he made of the master's works in oils, showing great fluidity of brushwork, and for the intimate studies of people around him. A Catholic, he was also amongst the most original painters of Christian themes. He specialized in portraits, being known for the expressive brushwork and coherent color schemes. And later expanded his oeuvre to sentimental interior scenes, landscapes and nudes. Among his works, the most impressive, in Vidya-mitra's opinion, are the works depicting his wife and daughter. In intimate domestic settings. His work Flora, backed him a prize at the 1920 show at the Bombay Art Society. Another work, Girl with Pot. Exemplifies his mastery in the medium of oils, seen in the tactile rendering of form and drapery, along with the fluid brushwork. His daughter, Angela, also a painter, describes him painting till the very end. by wheeling himself in his wheelchair due to amputated legs. His last work, Echo Home, sums up his life's message as it coerces the viewer to ponder about loving each other and one's neighbor. Artists trained at JJ School of Art also went on to success overseas. One such artist was Samuel Rahmin from the Ben Israeli community of Pune, who after graduating from the art school joined the Royal Academy at London. Here he was mentored by J. Solomon and John Singer Sargent for 4 years. That further refined his work. He exhibited at the Royal Academy exhibition in 1906 and on his return was appointed the court painter for the Gaikwar at Baroda. Where he painted some of his finest portraits of the royal family from 1908 to 1918, being the art advisor to the state. We shall look at 2 of his works, first being Sir Chinubhai M. Baronet's portrait and the other being Sir Chinubhai M. Baronet and family. Both these works highlight his mastery over the academic naturalist style. In the latter portrait, the industrialist is shown in the presence of his wife and children. We observe how he very subtly places apart the son-in-law at the extreme left by giving him a dreamy gaze at variance with all the other members of the family. The painting is in the best traditions of descriptive illusionism of oil portraits. Amidst all this, due to his marriage to Atiya Begum of the Faizi family in 1912, he changed his faith from Judaism to Islam and consequently his name from S. Rahmin Samuel to S. Faizi Rahmin. The measure of his success was also in his regular showings at London in 1914 and his first European one-man exhibition in Paris in the same year. Later, he successfully showcased in 1925 at Arthur Tooth's and in 1935 at Arlington Galleries. He was also the first Indian Jewish painter to be acquired by Tate Gallery. Ronald Alley, in his catalogue of the Tate Gallery's collection of modern art other than works by British artists, notes another facet of Rahmin as an artist. He comments that he first painted portraits in oils in the manner of Sargent, but after his return to India in 1908, he gradually quit this style in an attempt to revive the tradition of Mughal painting, the examples of which can be seen in some works. He later went on to assist the Victoria and Albert Museum and the Metropolitan Museum, New York, in the restructuring of their Oriental sections. He spent his last years from 1947 in Karachi, Pakistan, where he died. Apart from academic oil painters who emerged out of the art schools at Calcutta and Bombay, the other art schools such as at Madras and Lahore were also producing academic realists, though maybe not in similar numbers. One such early oil painter from the Madras school is Archibald Herman Mueller, who was born to a German Protestant father and an Indian Catholic mother. After his graduation from Madras School of Art, he worked in his brother's photographic studio in Madras briefly, later moving to Bombay to try his luck. In 1911, he won the Bombay Art Society's top award in painting for his Princess Giving Gift to a Brahmin, which Vidya-mitra notes is inspired from Ravi Verma's similar theme of charity in one of his paintings. For a while, he gave private lessons in painting in his apartment. And later, when World War II broke out, he joined the Volunteer Reserve Force, gaining popularity with his skillful sketches. Vidya-mitra believes that the biggest strength of Mueller was his knowledge of human anatomy, along with fluid yet elegant figure groupings in his work. He had mastered the mediums of oils, watercolors and pastels, and also an understanding of themes from Hindu mythology that he then painted. Mueller took to themes that fell under the nationalist rubric, drawing upon mythology and history. He also made studies in nude to impart a naturalistic treatment to figures. Though Ratan Parimu and Nalini Bhagwat make the distinction that his preference and mastery of Greco-Roman proportions for Indian characters makes his style comparable to that of Duranda's, quite distinct from that of Ravi Verma. Some of his important paintings include Ganga's Descent into Patal, Shakuntala at Dushyant's court, Krishna and Arjuna at Kurukshetra, and the prediction of Prince Siddharth, to name a few. Another interesting example would be Shivaji in Agra, a more contemporary Maharashtrian nationalistic theme of Shivaji being imprisoned by Aurangzeb. Vidya-mitra notes that even though mostly his drawings were sensitive, whereas some of his paintings verged on a sugary treatment, in his later years, he was appointed as a court painter, first by the Maharaja of Bikaner and then Jodhpur. This entire narrative of oil painting in the late 19th and early 20th centuries of our artists even outside the formal art school system, striving to learn the style and technique of the Calcutta school students, rebelling against the shift of emphasis from academic art to Indian painting, of artists from different regions participating in the annual Art Society exhibitions and striving to be noticed and earn commissions, all point towards the early recognition that oils, in the academic naturalist manner, was the future. But winds of change were soon blowing, with the revivalism of the Bengal school in Calcutta spreading to various parts of the country, and an Indian modernism was just around the corner.